The Shivering Sands by Victoria Holt. Her haunting new bestseller. Haunting new bestseller by Fontana. At least it was haunting and it was new in 1969. Is it haunting? Read it and find out. I've got this lovely Fontana copy. The cover, I don't know that you can see it. It's got this strange greeny tinge to it, and I don't know if that's because it's old. This is not a first printing edition, of course. It's not from 1969, it's from 1972. So it's still got a couple of years on it. And I feel like someone might have put contact over the pages to give it this strange greeny hue. So what's it about? On the edge of a quicksand. Carolyn Verlaine goes to Lovat Stacy, a lonely old house on the Kent coast, to search for her missing sister. Is Roma's disappearance due to an accident or murder? If she has been murdered, is the murderer still at Lovat Stacy? It seems likely. And is he or she aware of Carolyn's intentions? In that ancient, sinister house, overlooking the treacherous Goodwin Sands, Carolyn slowly becomes aware that she is to be the next victim. Victoria Holt used to be everywhere. Sorry, chicken, that was me, I bumped you. Sorry. You used to see her in libraries, you used to see her on library sales table, you used to see her in the op shops and the second-hand shops. And I read a lot of Victoria Holt back in the day, because around about the 80s, I'm going to say the 80s, she was everywhere and it was cheap, and I was remarkably indiscriminate about what I read if I didn't have a book at hand. So I read a lot of Victoria Holt. Didn't love her, didn't keep any of her, haven't read any for a long time, because right now I've got plenty of books that are more on my to-read list. But I picked up this one for my ABC challenge. I'm currently reading Authors Beginning with H. That was not how I meant the challenge to go. I meant the ABC challenge to be a way for me to read the books I already had on my extensive shelves of unread books. However, I saw this one at the local community shop. I got it. Let's talk about Victoria Holt. Ubiquitous name. I feel like anyone my age who reads books probably does know it. It was one of the fairly numerous pen names used by Eleanor Alice Buford. Bufford? I'm going to say Buford. Who was born in 1906, died in 1993, and was an English writer of historical romance. And this lady was prolific. I'm pretty sure that while I was reading up on her a little bit, I saw a quote from one of the interviews with her where she said, "Luckily, my married life enabled me to write books." And if that quote is from her, like I think it is, this is a lady that took full advantage of this opportunity. On her death, she had, I think, over 200 novels published and millions from each of her many pen names. Now, if you don't know Victoria Holt, you may know Jean Plaidy. Jean Plaidy was a pen name that she used specifically for historical books, fictionized history of European royalty, and there was some Spanish Inquisition in there, as I remember. I never liked Jean Plaidy books. I tried a few times. I liked history, but the writing just didn't engage me. So I have read one or two, didn't love them. Philippa Carr was her pen name for multi-generational family sagas. And I'd had read a few of those. I didn't mind them, didn't love them. But then I didn't love Victoria Holt either. She had a number of other pseudonyms, and she wrote crime novels, murder mysteries, thrillers. Essentially, she wrote a bit of everything. She got an award at one stage. Most of her pen names were tied to something. Jean Plaidy was tied to, I think, her country home, and I think that was on Kent. Anyhow, Victoria Holt, pen name for Eleanor Alice Hibbert nee Buford. Fascinating story, well worth reading up on. What did I think of the book? Well, at 320 pages, it's not an insignificant read. It is overall well written. And for the first 100 or so pages, I remembered all the things that I liked about this type of book. I don't actually remember any of the others that I read. I think I read her last book, which was published posthumously and was set in Australia, and there was a black opal involved. Not sure I remember any of her others. When she's writing about settings and people and motivations, she does an excellent job, and I was really enjoying the first bit. Then we get into the romancy bit, and I remembered why I stopped reading as much Victoria Holt, at least, as I used to. The romance was not engaging. The attraction between the main protagonists, all three of them, was not particularly convincing and not particularly enjoyable to read. The dialogue between them, unlike the dialogue with everyone else in the book, was unconvincing and unenjoyable. A few times I had to stop myself from skim reading what I feel like Victoria Holt felt was witty badinage between the two main. Will she, won't she, does he, doesn't he? Is he bad? Of course he's bad. Everyone says he's bad, but she knows the truth deep in her heart. Ooh, ow. So there's good things and there's bad things about the book. She does deliver an excellent ending, I will say that. But about 100 pages of getting to that ending, I feel could have been trimmed quite significantly. There is a point in the plot where someone keeps telling our protagonist, Caro, that they are responsible for the disappearance or know all about it. Now, whether this was actually the perpetrator or this was a red herring that Victoria threw at us is beside the point. The fact that the main protagonist never paid any attention to these multiple really strong hints was unpleasant. There were a couple of other hints that kind of missed. Anyhow, the back of the book is pretty correct. We start with Caroline Verlaine. She is Mrs. Verlaine. And Caro, as we call her, we get the backstory, and the backstory is really good. She's the daughter of two parents who were committed and convicted archaeologists, and they brought up her and her older sister, Roma, to be fascinated by archaeology as well. Roma fell right into it. She loved the archaeology from the get-go, but Caroline never did. So there we've got... So Caroline was the outlier in the family, and they were all a bit worried about her because she didn't love archaeology, until they discover one day that she actually does like music. And then it was okay for her not to be an archaeologist because she was going to be a musical prodigy. And she kind of was. She played for ages, and then she went to Paris to study music, where she met another young man at the academy whose name I have forgotten. Pietro? I think it was Pietro Verlaine. And they ended up marrying. He was a genius, and he played on stages all around Europe and England. And for the sake of the marriage, she gave up her music. And we have that constant antagonism about the fact that she was a really good musician, but maybe she didn't have the same genius as her husband. Her husband died of a heart attack. And at the point where we enter the story, we've got Caro going back to Kent. Lovett Stacey, a very difficult name for me to remember. She goes back to Kent because directly after her husband died, her sister Roma, their parents already being deceased, took her on the dig she was doing. She'd found this dig in Kent, one of the Roman digs. There was an amphitheatre, and she was assuming that there was actually going to be a town associated. So working for the British Museum, she got a grant and a whole group together, and they were digging this Roman site. If you're not into archaeology, this book gives you just enough and not too much of that, of the excitement of it, the tedium of the day-to-day. It's a really good description. Anyhow, we've got Caro mourning her husband, not knowing what she wants to do with herself, and she goes on this dig. Then she goes back to London and starts trying to make a life for herself as a music teacher, and her sister vanishes. It's the last day of the dig. Roma packs up everything and then is just never to be seen again. In time, Caro is given the opportunity to go down to Lovat Stacy. I mean, really, does that mean something, or is it just there to upset me? Whatever. Lovat. What is a Lovat? I can see Stacy. Anyway, Caro goes down to Lovat Stacy to become the music teacher for the 3 resident girls and the daughter of the vicar. And then we've got this build-up, because she'd seen the house already when she was visiting her sister. She'd been in church to watch the marriage of the son of the house to the ward, to his father's ward, who was then living in Lovat Stacy and was apparently an heiress. So she already has that involvement. She's fascinated by this Gothic house full of gargoyles and stuff. So, brief segue. Is this a Gothic? Is this a Gothic romance? Well, if you'd have asked me that 5 years ago, I'd have laughed in your face and said that this is no more Gothic romance than a Mills and Boon is a Gothic romance. By the way, Eleanor Alice Buford, nee Hibbert, did indeed write for Mills and Boon a few times. I'm sure they were some of the better ones, because she can write. Since, in the last couple of years, I've been watching a lot of videos by Nick from the book Graveyard and some other people about Gothics, and I've come to realise that Gothic romances are a thing that I was reading for a long time without ever realising it. I don't feel that this is Gothic. I always think of Gothic as belonging to a certain era, and I don't think that era is this era. No date is actually given for this, and it has a very old-worldy feeling in many ways, including Lovat Stacy itself. But Lovat Stacy is an old building, and you've got the Roman ruins nearby, and you've got this small village with the vicar and the vicar's wife who is involved in everything. Is it a Gothic romance? Look, you tell me. Especially if you've watched all of Nick's videos and his discussions with other Gothic romance readers. Is the cover Gothic? I gather it doesn't fulfill all the requirements. There is indeed a young woman in a long dress standing on it, but it's not a nightgown and she isn't running. She does look kind of wide-eyed and scared. Nice painting, by the way. But there's no house in the background with one lighted window. There's no dark and stormy night. What you've got in the background is a rather pretty cut painting of the ocean and clouds. So, I would argue, not a Gothic cover. Gothic romance? The internet says so. And we do have, Gothic or otherwise, we do have this really cool mystery suspense novel. And it is very, very skillfully done. So we've got Caro in this house teaching music to the girls. She also plays music for Sir William, who owns the house. And Victoria Holt slowly gives us all these interconnected relations. What Caro wants to do is to try and figure out what happened to her sister Roma, and if it was something bad, anyone in the house complicit with it. And in order to do that, she has to find out about the people in the house, most of whom have a secret or two, some of whom have fairly significant secrets. But are the secrets real, or are they more red herrings? There are shoals of fish in this book. Red herrings flying through it at you in every direction. Some of which are obvious, some a bit less so. All of them fun to read. Aside from the romance part. If you read this one because you want a romance, I feel that you may be disappointed. The romance is very marginal. It's more of a character development of someone who could potentially be a romance interest. There's also the mad relative living in the keep with them. And then, of course, we've got the Gordian knot of the son of Sir William killed his brother. Was it an accident? Wasn't intentional? The wonderful beau that everyone loved. He got sent to Australia for however many years. Now he's been summoned back to wed this heiress to keep the money in the family, as it were. So he has married the heiress, whose name I have already forgotten, unfortunately. Elise? Edith. Edith. Edith is shy and non-confrontational. Napier, who she's married to, is far from any of those things. And the marriage is obviously not going well. Edith is clearly miserable. We find out through Caro that Edith actually has taken a shine to the curate in the vicarage. And they are in love, but she, of course, is married to someone else, and then she vanishes. 2 vanishments. 2 young women have vanished in this vicinity. Roma and Edith. Are they connected? Well, of course they are, says Caro, and continues on to find out. She has a couple of brushes with death. She has a second love interest thrown into the pot. The new curate, when he arrives, is a more mature man and more worldly, and he recognizes her. She is concealing her link to Roma, to her sister, from the household because she feels they may not want her there. So William had not initially wanted anyone digging up the past on his land, and though Roma talked him around, Caro's hiding it. So that's her secret. They all have secrets. It is fairly action-packed for Victoria Holt, say people on the internet. My memory would say that it is a little bit action-packed. Some places say that this is indeed one of her better ones. I would say that the biggest weakness here is the romance element. Napier is very oddly described and thrown in there, and the alternative love interest, the curate Godwin, Mr. Godwin, whatever, is given a bit more, but it's pretty basic. And there's also the slightly creepy narrative that Godwin, whatever his name is about 30, so young by my standards, but Caro is 28, so he's exactly the right age for him. But once he arrives as a curate, the vicar's wife is determined that to get him for her daughter Sylvia, who is 16, which is a little bit ick in 2026, but was probably considered fairly mainstream standard in 1969. I'm glad the world is moving on with these things. So yeah, Victoria Holt, The Shivering Sands. If it's a Gothic and you want to read a Gothic, I think you could do worse. You could certainly do worse from Victoria Holt. If you want to read a romance, look elsewhere. There's not too much in here. But if you want a fun mystery, suspense, thriller with a fairly likable heroine, she does some pretty damn stupid things, but overall likable and fairly believable, maybe try Victoria Holt, The Shivering Sands. And thank you for watching, and read good books, and have a great day.